and welcome to the In the Moment magazine podcast. I'm Sarah Orme. Today I'm really excited to be joined by author Matt Haig, whose best-selling books include The Humans, How to Stop Time and Reasons to Stay Alive, which is a deeply personal account of Matt's experience of anxiety and depression. Today we'll be talking about the follow-up to Reasons to Stay Alive, which is Notes on a Nervous Planet, which is out really soon, which looks at whether modern life is making us miserable. Hi Matt, thanks for joining us.
Hello, it's very nice to be here.
Okay, so let's get straight in there. Why is life making us really stressed?
Well, I think my own sort of theory that I touch on in the book is that, modern life isn't necessarily uniformly bad, but we are experiencing a lot of change. And if you think of why people get mentally ill or why they experience bouts of depression, often one of the trigger is a sort of personal change. So the question I ask in the book is, what happens when whole societies change? What happens when the world is changing fast? I mean, looking at technology alone, in a little more than a decade, the way we communicate with each other has massively changed. The way we work has changed, and this book is looking at our mental health from that kind of perspective. It's like looking at the world in terms of health, in terms of external things, because we do that already with physical health. We're very much aware that what we eat affects our physical health. We're very much aware that passive smoke affects our physical health. Various things about how we live a sedentary lifestyle, whatever it is. What we're not so aware of is that the same is true for mental health. And this book is trying to sort of focus in and explore areas of possible triggers for us about modern life, whether it's social media, whether it's how we're sleeping. We're sleeping differently than we used to. I mean, a lot of us, I for instance, love watching Netflix and streaming sort of TV shows and stuff, but that's having an impact on our sleep. Recently, this won't all be doom and gloom, but recently the head of Netflix said that his main competitor isn't another TV company, it's sleep.
What?
So it's actually sleep, because sleep is where they can make their money. If people are having less sleep and they're staying up and watching the next show, so they're going to bed at 2 a.m. because they've watched five shows in a row, then that's how they will boost their business model. So we have a lot of forces that we're not always necessarily aware of, whether it's internet, TV, just the stress of modern life, how we're working, how much personal space we've got. And this book is to look at the problems, but in a way to be aware of them. It's a mindfulness book, really, in the sense that it's about being mindful and aware of why we're feeling what we're feeling.
Yeah, and one thing you talk about quite a lot in the book is devices and, for example, the mobile phone and how we've kind of become quite hooked on that. So can you tell us a little bit more about your experiences with...
Yes, well, that? I'm definitely not writing this book from a high ground. I definitely have been addicted to my phone and checking it and doing it too much. For instance, I always charged my phone by the bed, and so I would wake up and I would check my emails, I'd check my Twitter and Instagram, I'd check my news, and then you'd be on just scrolling aimlessly for ages, and that's like an hour of your day gone, and you sort of feel, and then therefore you're not eating breakfast at the right time, everything's just a bit more delayed, and it just sort of swallows up time. And I think this compulsive checking is very bad for anxiety. What I notice is if I've put a post online, whether it's a photo on Instagram, whether it's an opinion on Twitter, whatever it is, I won't just leave it there. I want to know what people are saying about it, so I'll go back and check and see if it's had the right reaction. If it's not, I'll try and do something else, and it becomes addictive. And I wasn't really aware of that. I used to be getting anxiety sometimes when I'd been on my computer too much, and I wasn't realising that had anything to do with it. But research from this book has made me realise and understand how compulsive those things are, and how technology is a cause of it. And technology itself isn't a new thing. Like I mentioned in the book about Samuel Pepys, when he was in London in the 16, whenever it was, he brought his new pocket watch, and he couldn't stop taking it out of his pocket, and he was obsessed with telling the time. And the thing was, it was an utterly rubbish pocket watch. It only had an hour hand, so all he could tell is if the time was near 1 o'clock. But as we, today with our smartphones, he was constantly checking it, and he ended up giving up the pocket watch because it was driving him crazy, because he was just checking all the time. So it's very hard sometimes to be mindful in contemporary life, because we've got so many things to check. There's so much. We're overloaded with everything. We're overloaded with every kind of thing. But it's books, magazines, TV shows, friends, we've technically connected to more friends than ever before, and we've got so many options. It's so hard sometimes to strip back and sort of remember who we are, but it's certainly possible, yes.
Yes, because one thing I think that sort of struck me in the book as well is that you can get really hung up on things people say online as well. I mean, I think you mentioned at the beginning of the book that you can't go to bed because you're angry with somebody a few thousand miles away. So how do you cope with that?
Well, I'm not always perfect, but I think I've got a bit better at sort of limiting my time on there. I mean, I only have to be on, say, Twitter for 5 minutes, and there'll be something that's making me angry. I almost feel like Twitter's one big machine for trying to just get us cross or feeling negative, and a lot of social media can be like that. The problem with a lot of other social media is you are comparing yourself subconsciously or consciously to other lives, whether it's how you parent, you're looking at the perfect bits of other people. You're looking at the very carefully presented.
Yes, it's like you're very selective, aren't you, what you put on social media? You're only going to put the stuff on that shows yourself in the best light.
Yes, and it's like we've become kind of magazines of ourselves, and we've become our own little personal fan clubs of ourselves. And so we always can see and feel our worst bits, but we're looking at everyone else's best bits. But again, it's just about being aware of that. I mean, personally speaking, when I'm at my happiest and when I'm having my best moments, they're the moments that I feel like I don't need to tweet or Instagram about. You're just in the moment, properly in the moment. So just remembering that, someone Instagramming about a great experience isn't them having a great experience.
No, because I think if you think about it, the strongest memories that you have tend to be the ones where you weren't on your phone. It's when you were with your friends, or you were on that camping trip and there was no signal, and you're in the middle of nowhere. And those tend to be the strongest memories we have.
Yes, it's almost a relief now when I can't get a signal, or if I'm on like a Greek island, that literally the whole island. Like last year we went island hopping, and it was so nice to go to a place where you see that you just can't check your phone. You have that initial sort of 2 hours of anxiety, and then it's amazing how quickly you suddenly don't care if there are any emails to get back to or whatever it is.
Yeah, because I suppose it's quite recent, the change where we've had mobile phones on us all the time. So before that, like if you missed your friend when you went out, you just didn't meet up with them. They were just not there. So that's really had an effect on our lives. I
know, and anxiety, because my worst thing, at least my worst thing for my partner about my sort of anxiety was I used to get separation anxiety. I used to find it very hard to be on my own, and we think phones have made that better, but it's actually made it worse, because now if I phone someone and I can't get through, then I'll start to worry about them. Or if I'm out without my phone, I'll think, well, what could happen? I could suddenly have a heart attack, or it could need, what would I do? What would I do? But yes, throughout all of history, throughout 150,000 generations of human beings, we survived perfectly well. But it's strange how reliant and dependent we've become so quickly. So, and this book isn't saying, oh, get off your computers, get off your phones, because A, that's unrealistic, and B, there are wonderful things about using it. It's just, I think we need a little bit to be aware of how we're using it. And one thing that's helped me is if I'm going online to do something, and if I stick to doing it, because just going online to do something, there'll be so many distractions. There'll be so many videos that are trying to get us to watch them, so many articles, so much pop-up advertising, so many things will pop up on our screen. And it's just about having that focus, which can be hard.
Yeah, I mean, like for me personally, for example, when I'm online, quite often I get quite hooked into things like reading the comments.
Yes.
And so what started off as, oh, I'll just read this article, then becomes like, oh, I'm going to read this entire thread. Is that something that you find as well?
Totally. And also, as I said at the start, time just is swallowed up that way. And and it's that impersonal thing, isn't it, with comments? You forget it's real people. And I think, people can be a lot ruder to each other online, and it's an anonymous thing. And we forget that we're dealing with real human beings because we're not seeing human beings in front of us, we're seeing a little square picture. And it's just always about being aware.
Looking at it from perhaps the more positive side, though, I mean, I guess the pluses of having social media is that we can actually now connect more easily with people we relate to as well. So
yes.
The flip side is that it can give you some support that you perhaps wouldn't otherwise find.
And for instance, when I first became ill with depression and anxiety, this was before the age of social media, and I kind of wish I'd had it because, one of the things, certainly when you're feeling bad in life, is you often feel very alone. And so I've seen firsthand tons of people it's helped for them to talk about their problems and to share it with other people, find like-minded people, find advice. Not everyone has a family that they can talk to comfortably about problems, and the internet gives you a space to explore that. But, it's not about something being good or bad. I mean, I enjoy the internet. I enjoy watching videos on YouTube and posting photos to Instagram. It's just we need to be aware of it as a health issue. For instance, I like eating strawberry ice cream. I do not want to give up eating strawberry ice cream, but I don't think it would be healthy for me to sit in bed eating strawberry ice cream for 6 hours.
Yeah. Of course, that's not like a life goal anyway.
No.
Maybe for some people.
Maybe. But it depends how good that ice cream is.
Yeah, okay. Another thing that's really struck me when I was reading the book is about time and how actually technology kind of takes away our time. And one thing you were saying is people saying things to you like, oh, I wish I had more time to play the piano, or I wish I had more time to do yoga. But you say in the book that technology is taking that away from us a little bit.
Yes, I mean, it should be sort of saving our time. We've always designed technology to save our time. We build dishwashers to save that time, and washing machines for the same purpose, microwave ovens, whatever it is, it's always to save time. But the more devices and more technology we've created, we don't seem to have any more time. And it's also the fact that we're so easy to contact as well has changed work. The weekend, for instance, used to be a sacred space where no one contacted you, but now it's not abnormal to get work emails on a Sunday, and any time of week. We're slowly losing those sorts of spaces of time away from that. So I think we need to sort of sometimes look at our priorities and realise why we work and why we use technology. Both of those things are to serve us. We're not there to serve technology. We're not there to serve work. It's to serve us collectively. And, sometimes there's a risk in losing that.
Yeah, I guess it's also a thing that we become quite dependent on it as well, as you said earlier.
Yes. Yeah, and it's an expectation, and we're expected to all, be text messaging and for instance, like my mum will send me a text, and if I haven't got back in about an hour, she's worried about me. Whereas in the old days, if you phone someone and they didn't get back, then just they're out of the house. But now there's that, because we have it in our pocket, where it's strange if someone hasn't got back to us.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned about checking up on people. I recently watched, I think it's called Safe on Netflix.
Okay,
based on the Harlan Coben book. The part of the storyline is that this man's daughter goes missing. The first thing he's doing is like, has she been on her Facebook? Has she been messaging her friends?
Yeah.
And that's like his first port of call, to check up on her. And actually, even for example, my mum, she'll talk about my little sister and go, "Is Katie all right? She hasn't been online."
Yeah.
And it's become actually a way that we check up on each other a bit as well, which is a little bit creepy.
No, absolutely. But then there's great things about it as well. For instance, like if we're choosing a hotel now, it's so nice to be able to see people who stayed in that very hotel a week before and see what their experience was.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I always check the 1-star ones as well as the
Yeah,
top ones.
just click on all the 1 stars.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, just to see if they're saying the same things, just
Yeah.
in case. So, like, if they're saying, "Oh, the owner of this hotel will scream at you," then
Yeah.
and they're all saying that, maybe you don't go there.
Yeah, and I'm very suspicious when it's only 5 stars. Or
Yeah, a little bit too perfect.
absolutely.
Yeah. So another thing I think would be good to talk about, and it's something that you talk a lot about in the book, is how the modern world makes us anxious, and makes us more stressed. So, what would you say is behind that?
100 different things. I think one reason, and it's not one we're always conscious of, but I feel like, in our sort of consumerist societies, to get us to buy things, to get us to consume, to get us to be consumers, we're often encouraged to feel we lack things. I mean, this is a literal sort of marketing strategy. To get you to buy an anti-aging moisturiser, we need to be worried about aging. To get you to vote for a politician, we need to be worried about immigration or whatever it is. To get us to buy a car, we've got to feel like we're sort of being left behind, and, new phone, that pressure to keep up with everybody. And so we constantly feel like we've got to sort of run to stay still. We're born with absolutely nothing, obviously, and most of us in this country are lucky enough to have shelter and food and the basic things the human needs to survive. And yet we've created all these other needs and all these other wants, which we're encouraged to have, and we're sort of encouraged to have, like, perfect bodies and to look a certain way and look young and wear these sort of clothes. And it's a constant... we're constantly being fed this idea of lacking, that we're not enough. Because if we were enough, we wouldn't buy anything extra. And I think... once you're just sort of aware of that, you see those sort of messages all the time. Like a classic one is the beach body. Do you have a beach-ready body? I mean, I very much doubt any of our sort of Neolithic ancestors in the Stone Age we're thinking, I can't go on that beach because look at me, where's my 6-pack? I can't do that.
No, they're just going to be like, I'm glad I've got all my limbs. They haven't been eaten by bears.
No. So I feel like there's a lot of pressures on us. Whatever, and it's not just those sort of consumerist pressures. I mean, look at the rates of anxiety and depression now in teenagers, and the pressures they face at school. The constant tests, and we feel like the way out is to always add more tests or always add sort of more goals. Like whether it's a diet to get to the body we want, whether it's studying for the grades we want, whatever. It's never enough just to be in the present. We're like encouraged to think from a very young age, even like kindergarten age, we're encouraged to think of the future. We're encouraged of the next stage. There's always a sort of test to revise for a job we want, a university we want to go to. If you're a young single person in your 20s, it's what relationship you're going in. There's always this pressure on the future. And so I think one of the reasons is the sort of like kickback against that with mindfulness and whatever it is, yoga, meditation, whatever, it is just like as a kind of balance, to balance that out, because it's not good for us to constantly resist our sort of animal human selves and to constantly be these future machines.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually that's something you cover really well in the book when you talk in the life goals section. I was wondering whether you can read that section for us.
Absolutely, yes. A chapter called Goalposts. Right. Yeah, I'll read the whole thing. Here we go. You will be happy when you get good grades. You'll be happy when you go to university. You will be happy when you go to the right university. You will be happy when you get a job. You'll be happy when you get a pay rise. You'll be happy when you get a promotion, when you can work for yourself. You will be happy when you are rich. You will be happy when you own an olive grove in Sardinia. You will be happy when someone looks at you that way. You'll be happy when you're in a relationship, when you get married, when you have children. You will be happy when your children are exactly the kind of children you want them to be. You will be happy when you leave home. You'll be happy when you buy a house. You'll be happy when you pay off the mortgage. You'll be happy when you have a bigger garden in the countryside with nice neighbours who invite you to barbecues on sunny Saturdays in July, with your children playing together in the warm breeze. You'll be happy to sing. You'll be happy to sing in front of a crowd. You'll be happy when your Grammy-winning debut album is #1 in 32 countries, including Latvia. You'll be happy to write. You'll be happy to be published. You'll be happy to be published again. You'll be happy to have a bestseller. You'll be happy to have a #1 bestseller. You will be happy when they turn your book into a movie, when they turn it into a great movie. You'll be happy when you're J.K. Rowling. You'll be happy when people like you. You'll be happy when more people like you. You'll be happy when everyone likes you. You'll be happy when people dream of you. You'll be happy to look okay. You'll be happy to turn heads. You'll be happy with smoother skin. You'll be happy with a flat stomach. You'll be happy with a 6-pack. You'll be happy with an 8-pack. You'll be happy when every photo of yourself gets 10,000 likes on Instagram. You'll be happy when you've transcended earthly woes, when you're at one with the universe. You'll be happy when you are the universe. You will be happy when you are a god. You'll be happy when you are the god to rule all gods. You'll be happy when you are Zeus in the clouds above Mount Olympus, commanding the sky. Maybe. So yes, I got a bit carried away with the Zeus thing there. But yeah, essentially that's what I'm guilty of, and I think a lot of people are, where, for instance, in my life, originally all I wanted to do was be a journalist and have an article published. And I thought I'd be happy forever if I could just keep doing that. And then, it's wanting the next thing,
Yeah, because we're always planning, what's my next stage?
Yeah.
What's the next goal in my life that I have to achieve, that
Absolutely.
people are expecting me to achieve as well?
And obviously we need a little bit of that. We need a little bit of ambition and momentum. But I think that side of us is far more weighted than the side that's just grateful, being grateful for what we have, and so it's always half empty rather than half full, isn't it? We're thinking about what we haven't got, and the grass is always greener, and we've got this fear of missing out and all those things.
So do you find that mindfulness has helped you then to cope with that kind of thing, so that you're focused on living more in the moment rather than living in the future?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm like an expert at that. I definitely, as a parent, I think it's helped me to sort of because children are sort of a masters at it. They can just sort of like play and be, and they're not too worried about tomorrow, and I think it rubs off a little bit. But I could be better because, for instance, like my book is about to be published, and even though I'm used to this, I'm constantly thinking about what will happen next week and the week after, and it's kind of hard to. But I think that's why, mindfulness isn't something we can just rely on. That's just like automatic. You have to kind of work at it.
It's one thing that we talk about a lot, being a mindfulness magazine. So it's training yourself to just slow down, and that can be really quite hard because personally I'm quite busy, so for me now, if I have a chance to do nothing, that actually feels like a real treat, and I'm like, well, I'm going to fully enjoy this.
Yes.
Is that something that you find?
Absolutely. Yoga's a big thing for me, and I started doing yoga just because I had a bad back, but I find it very good for me, for my anxiety, and I think the breathing's a part of it, but I also find it very difficult, and the thing I find most difficult about yoga is the Shavasana pose at the end, when you're just lying on the floor.
Yeah.
And you're just lying still, and you're sometimes lying still for 5 minutes, and that, more than any of the sort of crazy hamstring stuff or whatever else it is, I find that the hardest thing, just to lie still and just sort of listen to a voice and just not think, oh, I could just click off this workout now and just sort of get on with the next thing. And while I'm here, I could check my phone and to really, really just resist doing anything, to just indulge yourself without feeling guilty, just sort of doing nothing for 5 minutes. 5 minutes is not a vast amount of time, but it feels so long when you're sitting doing nothing for 5 minutes.
Yeah, it is. It does take quite a lot of discipline to do. I mean, I'm one of these people, if I go on holiday, I cannot sit on a sun lounger. I'll do it for maybe a little while, and then I'm like, right, what am I going to do now? I'm going to go swimming. I'm going to...
Yes, I've got myself one of those next week. We're going away for 4 days, just because I used to absolutely hate that. I'd always want the sort of busy Barcelona, ticking everything off kind of holiday. But we're going to a little Greek island, and I'm going to force myself to be stapled to a sun lounger and just sort of, do stuff, but not feel I have to do everything. Not feel like I have to do, because... even like our holidays can be another form of pressure, and it's hard, but I'm always thankful when I've done it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but I normally come back feeling more tired than before I went away.
Yeah, well, city breaks definitely can do that.
Yeah, okay. So should we talk a bit more about anxiety then, and how modern life makes us anxious? I think it was quite interesting, the one section in the book where you were talking about the supermarket. So can you tell us a bit about that part?
Oh, yeah. Well, I used to be really bad at supermarkets, because when I first had my anxiety, well, the first diagnosis I ever got was panic disorder, which basically means you're having panic attacks a lot. And even when you're not having a panic attacks, you're just anticipating the next one. And even when I got over that, I would have the occasional panic attack, and it was always not always, but often in supermarkets. And so we were living in Leeds at the time, and we'd just go to the local Morrison's or wherever it was. And whatever, I'd go there feeling okay, feeling quite strong, and then within about 5 minutes of being in a supermarket, I would panic and get stressed. And I don't really know what it is. I mean, there's all kinds of things it could be. There's the artificial lighting. A lot of supermarkets don't have any natural light. You're in a very... Going back to that point about being a consumer, you're in the ultimate consumer environment. So there's everything that you could be buying or that other people are buying. And, our consumer choices aren't just choices about what we need to eat. They're choices about who we are. And so we're surrounded by... a million lifestyle choices, basically, when we go into a supermarket. And I just found I'd always have panic attacks, and just all the products on the aisles, and I'd always want to get out of there, which isn't always the way to treat it. One of the ways I got over, well, not fully over anxiety, you never really get over anxiety, but the way I managed my anxiety was by refusing to listen to that voice of run, get out, escape, and just sort of like, and going through it, almost like running through a stitch. You sort of go through, and eventually your brain starts to realise, I won't listen to it, and the voice ends up getting quieter. But yeah, as supermarkets, and it's not just me, I think supermarkets are very... common thing. I mean, we're busy. That's one thing. There's a lot of stimulation. You've got all those brands on the shelves, which, there's been whole meetings around the world about how to make these products stand out and scream out at us. And I think, although they're actually literally silent, there's a kind of, when you're very sort of in that moment of mental illness, all those branded goods kind of scream out at us. And it's very unnatural. I mean, we were meant to sort of get our vegetables from the ground. We were meant to fish our fish from the sea or the rivers. And, not being too hippy-dippy about it, supermarkets are a kind of wholly unnatural space. And these products are all sort of removed from their natural habitats. And we're kind of removed from ours, so we have that effect, which is a real symptom called derealisation. There's a symptom called derealisation, which was something I used to experience without knowing what it was called, but it's where you or the world starts to suddenly sort of feel unreal. It's not that you think you're not real. You kind of know rationally you are real, but the feeling is very hard to explain, but the feeling is that everything around you suddenly isn't real.
Would you say it's almost a bit of a dream-like feeling? Well, I say dream-like, maybe nightmarish is perhaps more the word.
Yeah, totally. It's not quite an out-of-body experience, but it has that element to it, where you don't feel the substance of yourself, I suppose.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say supermarkets are a bit of a trigger for them or similar places like stations, that kind of thing, because they're so bright, you've got so much going on around you, and also there's lots of people as well, lots of bodies moving in all directions, and I think that's quite stressful for a lot of people.
And I think choice is stressful, and supermarkets are all choice, aren't they? And there's a quote from a philosopher, Søren Kierkegaard, who says that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. And I wouldn't go quite that far, but there is a dizziness of choice, when you've got so many options. We all want choice, but actually making decisions and saying no to other things is stressful. So in a supermarket, you're constantly making choices. I don't know.
But it's quite interesting because we're also being steered in that direction, because I was reading quite an interesting book, and it was about how you're manipulated to buy various things. And it was saying that you always have like a benchmark in your head, like this is the price I'm expecting to pay. And so they'll quite often have products in different ranges, and what they want you to buy is not the most expensive or the cheapest, they want you to buy the middle one. But because you've got something to compare them to, your brain is kind of weighing it up and go, oh, okay, well, I think that one is probably the best one then. I'm not going for the cheapest. I don't think that expensive one is the one for me. And this is particularly true of menus in restaurants.
Right. Yeah.
So they're playing with your mind and you just don't know it all the time.
And there's always sort of slightly sinister element to it. Like there's a acronym I mentioned in the book, FUD, which is fear, uncertainty, and I forgot the D. Something in it. But basically, it's marketing people trying to create fear and uncertainty in their products and in the consumers, so that you're worried about something, so you buy it. So you go around a supermarket and you feel needs for things that you hadn't even heard of before entering the building.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a similar thing as like women shaving their legs as an example. Women didn't used to do that, and that was kind of actually a marketing thing to get people to do it. So this is, I think, early 20th century, and they sort of made women feel like they needed to, and that this is a sexy thing.
Yes, and women are obviously way ahead with those sort of pressures, but I even feel it as a man sometimes as the increasing grooming things that you're encouraged to be thinking about, which, go back to our sort of cave people routine. And keep modern medicine, but then do without some. Yeah,
maybe we could cut back on some of these things.
Exactly.
It's interesting what you were saying a minute ago, actually, about having too many choices. Because I know I've heard that Mark Zuckerberg has basically a wardrobe of identical outfits.
Yes, it's true. Yeah.
So
I didn't go the full Zuckerberg, but I used to. If I liked a black T-shirt, I buy about 5 of them from Zara or wherever. I kind of like that approach. I think it's risk being a bit boring and a bit strange, but. I can remember actually when I was really depressed, in the bleak moment of depression, all those sort of daily decisions are so hard. Like you can just sort of sit there staring at your sock drawer thinking, oh, what should I wear? This is so hard, all these choices. And you don't notice it in normal life when you're feeling, inverted commas, normal or okay. But when you're ill, it's like all those little decisions, you really realise that they are decisions, and we might not... There's not many sort of silver linings or advantages about mental illness, but I think having had experience of mental illness, you realise it's a strange kind of education. You realise the things that are good for your mind and the things that are bad for your mind, which when you're well you don't always think about, because you don't always have to think about, but it must be having some sort of effect in terms of that stress. So you learn, for instance, being outside, walking outside, that's making me feel better. Missing lunch or watching too much TV, that's making me feel worse. And when you're depressed, it's almost life or death. You have to work out what's... when you're normally well, it's hard to have that.
So it's almost like having the extra choices is, in a way, putting extra pressure on yourself.
Totally.
And perhaps you don't realise in your normal life
Yeah.
how much these small choices stress you out, how much mental energy you're actually dedicating to them, when you
Yeah.
could be focusing on more important things.
I think that's it, totally. It's that mental energy which we're spending all the time. But we think we're fine because we're not ill, but we might not be fine. We're all on a scale. You know, in mental health, it's not just about illness and wellness. As with physical health, none of us are the full 100%.
No, I mean, like, personally, say if I'm feeling a bit stressed about something, I try to, like, sort of almost go through a bit of a checklist for me. Like, am I overtired? Am I hungry? Which is actually surprisingly often, you know, and just do like a little sort of check of myself. Am I okay?
Yeah,
Is that
sure.
something that you would do?
Yeah. But I have to say, I'm better at that when I'm in my sort of anxiety patches. I sometimes wish I could live like I was ill when I'm well, you know, because I'm so careful when
Yeah.
I'm ill. I don't want to feel ill, but to have that sort of knowledge about, you know, going to bed at 10:30. I mean, what I've become more aware of in my life, because I don't eat too badly, I exercise quite a lot, do my running and yoga and things, but sleep, that's what I'm really bad at. So I'm being more mindful that I really need my sleep. I've bought myself blackout blinds, and I'm not on my phone in the bed now, which is a major step for me, because I was doing that all the time. And that blue light really does interfere.
It does. I mean, personally, for me, I have like blue light turned off
Yeah.
on my computer. I have it turned off on my Kindle and whatever else. And I actually have a point where I'm like, turn off. This is my turn off time. This is
How
when
do you turn off the blue light, is it?
Oh, they have like I've got an iPhone that's got a setting on it, and you
Okay.
can actually switch it off, which is
Oh, that's
really
good.
quite handy,
Yeah.
really. Although then perhaps that encourages you to stay on it for longer, so
Yeah.
maybe it's not such a good thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly, like I now will have like a bit of a routine. It's like, okay, I'll turn things off by this time. I'll maybe have a herbal tea. Occasionally, I'll use like a meditation app, but not all the time. And
Yeah.
but you have to actually make a conscious effort to do that, because it's quite easy to get out of the habit of it, and then you
Totally.
go back into your bad habits. You're like, suddenly you're staying up until midnight reading a book or watching Netflix, and
Yeah.
it's quite hard to break out of those habits.
Absolutely.
Should we talk a little bit about basically how to disconnect, how to switch off our busy minds? So what things work for you?
Well, often it's literally disconnecting. It's literally putting the phone down, going for a walk, walking the dog without taking the phone. Because I found that even on most times of day where you're meant to be sort of relaxing or in the zone, you're just walking the dog to the park, I'd just be constantly checking. But to have... It's amazing what even a small amount of time away from it does. It's just that sort of like reconnects with yourself. Not constantly checking, having times of day to get back to emails has been really good. Like, I check emails at various times, but I know I'll just sit down at night and sort of write over non-urgent emails. And having the phone not charged in the bedroom has been massive for me. Charging it downstairs, getting outside every day. If it's getting outside before it gets dark, getting some natural light. I'm obsessed with light. That has such an effect on me. I know everyone's different. Some people actually find it stressful when it's too light, but we've painted our house totally white. We live in almost like an art gallery. When you walk in, it's bright white. We've made it as light as possible.
That sounds almost quite Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Sort of, like Italy, and they paint everything
yes.
white.
Yeah, and the Greek islands, like the Cyclades islands, which I love. They're bright white, and then they've got those sort of blue doors and shutters, and I like that look. It's more... What I'm a comfort about all this is knowing. For instance, when I have felt my worst in my life, it's because I felt confused or trapped, or like I'm going to stay like this forever because I don't know what's happening to me. One of the reasons I wanted to write Notes on a Nervous Planet is because I wanted to identify, almost like a detective, why I feel what I feel. Because so often we're feeling things. For instance, if you're in a relationship and you're grumpy with them, I think you end up having less arguments if you are mindful. If you suddenly run a little checklist, it doesn't have to be a literal checklist, but if you have a little think like, have I eaten lunch? How did I sleep last night? What work pressures are on me? And if you run through all of them, you'll probably hit some, this is why I'm feeling, it's not their fault over there. Actually, just take a deep breath, it's fine. And there's always some reason other than the reason we think in front of us why we're feeling negative. And so I find there's a great comfort in knowing if I'm feeling like anxious or depressed, in sort of tracing back. What did I do last week? Why was I? How much sleep have I been having recently? What have I been eating? Did I drink alcohol last week? And you run through, and then you actually feel, because as soon as you identify it, you realise, well, okay, it's a response to that. Therefore, I can fix it, and therefore it's not permanent. And the reason I was ill for about 3 years in a row with depression and anxiety, and I was sort of suicidal and everything. And the reason why it was so hard to get out of was because I thought it was all down to me. It was sort of like a mental health lottery, and I was just going to, that was just it. It was my genetic makeup, my neurochemistry, and that had nothing to do with the outside world or how I reacted with it. And obviously that's not true, because even if you take mental illness just as a brain chemistry thing, our brain chemistry is affected, like a lot of our bodies, with how we live and the outside world. So, just being aware sometimes is an end in itself.
Before we wrap this up, is there anything else that we haven't mentioned?
I just wanted to say, because my books are often sort of lumped in with the, certainly Reasons to Stay Alive and Notes on a Nervous Planet, not my novels, but those books are often lumped as self-help, and I've got nothing against the term self-help, but one possible problem I have with it is it suggests that someone has all the answers, and I definitely don't have all the answers. But I think my job with writing these books is sort of my job as a person with mental illness is just about asking questions. It's about trying to work things out, because I feel like in many ways with our minds we're still kind of in the dark ages. We're slowly getting to the light, but there's so much about our brains, our bodies, how they interact that we don't know. And so one of the things I think is important is to stop looking at mental health and physical health as two separate worlds. For one thing, our brains are physical, and also our minds react to our bodies, and they react to the wider world. And I think there'd be a lot less stigma, and we'd find it a lot easier to talk about and to experience in ourselves and not stigmatise ourselves if we understood that it's all health, and none of us have all the answers, and we're all trying to help each other out.
Yeah. Oh, that's really lovely. Okay, well, thank you for joining us. And can you just tell us when your book is going to be out?
It's out from, I don't know when this podcast is, but it's out soon. It's out from the start of July.
And it's obviously in all good bookshops?
All good bookshops, yeah, and a few supermarkets too, and obviously for normal internet places. Yes.
Okay, and where can people follow you on social media?
Well, if you want to see my mental health in action, you can follow me on Twitter, Matt Haig 1. There was an original Matt Haig who was there before me, Haig 1, Matt Haig 1, and I'm also on Instagram now as Matt Z Haig.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'll be following you.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and you'll be in the magazine as well. I'm not quite sure when, but if you're listening to this later, it doesn't matter.
Wonderful, that was lovely.
Okay, thank
lovely
you.
Chat. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you for listening to the In the Moment magazine podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and you can find more from Matt Haig in issue 16, which goes on sale on the 24th of August. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already done so, and we'd really appreciate it if you could leave a rating or review for us on Apple Podcasts, because that really helps other people to find us. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can find us on social media at In the Moment Mag, or you can email us on calmmoment@immediate.co.uk. And before we go, I'd just like to give a bit of a shout out to @NanaMilkTea on Instagram, who left us this really lovely message. She says, "I listened to Laura Wright's interview, which was so inspiring, and her playlist to help me get through my college finals week really did the trick. Thanks from California, USA."
Well, I hope your exams went really well, and I hope you got good grades. And we'll be back again with the podcast very soon. Bye!